All right, good morning. Moving on to the next session on maritime heritage in wartime. Just want to say before I start, thank you very much to Michael and Mr. Magic Sefeng for giving us an extra 15 minutes. I hope it will be worth it. My name is Lars Amreus. I'm the Director General of the Swedish National Maritime and Transport Museums. It's a conglomerate of 5 museums. We have the Maritime Museum, we have the Naval Museum, we have our new Museum of Wrecks, we have, of course, the famous Vasa Museum, and we also have the National Railway Museum. Now, we've spent a good few days here in these lovely venues in the Low Countries, sharing experiences, sharing challenges for our respective museums and ships. But I dare say that none of these experiences, and certainly none of these challenges, come even close to what we are about to dive into now. We all know of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine that took place in February 2022. We have all seen proof of the aggressor's total disregard of innocent lives. We have seen how civilians, schools and hospitals, as well as museums and heritage, have become deliberate targets for the enemy. Now, we had good conversations yesterday on decolonization, and these are very important discussions. It's a hugely burning topic. But let me just remind you that colonization is not a thing of the past. It's happening right now in Ukraine. There can be no doubt that the aggressor is aiming to conquer and to exploit all of Ukraine's resources, tear down Ukrainian culture, seize or destroy cultural heritage, and to rewrite history to serve its own purposes. That is colonialism, and we must not let that happen. It's my privilege here today to introduce 2 Ukrainian colleagues from 2 different institutions who will share their experiences of what it means to research, protect, preserve archaeological maritime heritage in the midst of war. Our first speaker, Dr. Sergii Paliienko, is unfortunately not able to be with us this morning. Due to some newly enforced restrictions, he's been able to get permission to leave Ukraine. I understand, though, that Sergei has tried very, very hard to be here, but unfortunately it's just turned out to be impossible. So instead, we will show a video presentation from Sergei, and hopefully we'll have Sergei with us for questions after the presentation. So, please, Dr. Sergei Paliienko.
Good morning, dear colleagues. I tried to join the Congress personally, but my attempt, unfortunately, was not successful. That is why I want to present my paper titled "The War in Ukraine and the Naval Museum: How We React, Adapt and Interact Online." But before, I want to tell a short story. When I was a graduate student, I participated in excavation of the Middle Paleolithic site in Crimea, the Skalna 6. And Yuri Kovalenko was my groupmate. We were young, but he was 13 years old, and he was working in archaeology before, but he had no master degree. Due to this, he joined our study, and he was a good singer. Often in the evening, we gathered near the fire. We sang, we discussed some interesting issues, and Yuri participated in searching works for finding remains of the World War II soldiers who were not buried. And we discussed this issue. And Yuri told that 1930s were a very interesting and tragic time, because it was a full generation who dreamed to change the world, who had their own life plans, but they didn't know that most of them soon would die. As we didn't know that time in 2005 that it would be a war in Ukraine, that in 18 years our friend and colleague Yuri would be killed at the front line, that other of us would be awoken one winter morning by blast behind the window, and we would be and we would feel and see the same as our grandparents felt, and veterans of the World War II told us at the celebration of the Victory Day at school. Please always remember that it is very easy to start war, but it is hard to stop. Unfortunately, the war is an everyday reality in Ukraine, and we were forced to adopt our life, our work, and our activity to it. That is why I want to share our experience, how our museum has done this. I hope it will be interesting and useful, but I hope you will never apply this experience on your own practice. Okay, let's start. Our museum was established in 1995. It had been working as a Naval Museum Complex Balaklava in Crimea and the military history complex Mikhail's Battery. I think the Balaklava complex was one of the most of the famous objects of the Cold War. It was opened at the former underground submarine base in Balaklava. The Sevastopol complex includes Mikhail's Battery, which is one of the few examples of the artillery defense fortification of the middle of 19th century. And in 2013, those two complexes were reorganized into the Central Naval Museum of Ukraine, which is a branch of the National Museum of the Military History of Ukraine, which belonged to the Ministry of Defense, sorry. And a little bit about the biography of Sergei Voronov, who is our director. Sergei started his career in the field of underwater archaeology in 1999. His professional maritime career started as a sailor and then continued as a captain of Svarog, which is an experimental historical vessel. You may see it on the right picture. Then he became the director of the Interdisciplinary Laboratory for Historical Research in 2000 and the director of the Department of Underwater Heritage in 2004 at the Institute of Archaeology of the National Academy of Science. From 2000 to 2016, Sergei found 2,750 sunken ships and 24 antique underwater cities and settlements, and entered them into the Ukrainian scientific registry, which was created by him. In 2006, Sergei led the Ukrainian-US research expedition with Robert Ballard, and then it was next year he led the international expedition Byzantium in 2007. In 2012, Sergei Voronov initiated an establishment of the Black Sea Underwater Research Center in Feodosia, Crimea, and became its first director. The Museum of Treasuries of the Black Sea was founded there by him. And there was a laboratory for conservation and restoration of underwater artifacts, which was the only lab of this kind in Ukraine. As a part of collaboration with business, we had an access for submersible vessels and an ROV. They were available for research purposes. You may see on pictures we at the ROV factory in Fareham, in the UK. We participated in maintenance training, and on other picture, this is submersible vessel. We were at training. We were certificated as submarine pilots and surface officers. An exploration of the Soviet submarine She 216, which was lost in 1944, was organized by Sergei Voronov in 2013. The Ukrainian Navy took part in this expedition. As a result, the conning tower and of the sub and its anti-aircraft cannons were extracted from the water. But it was the last Ukrainian underwater expedition in Crimea. We had a lot of plans on the next year, but the Russians came. Crimea was annexed by the Russian Federation in March 2014. Ukraine lost the museum historical buildings, a part of collections, research vessels with ROV, and the restoration law. But the Naval Museum officially had been moved to Kiev. Sergei Voronov came there from Crimea too. And a part of museum collections and equipment were saved, including the list of underwater heritage objects with rare positions, which was the most important for us. The government of Ukraine made efforts to recover our museum, and Sergei Voronov became its director in 2017 as probably one of the most experienced person in the field of underwater archaeology and in the museum work. The recovery plan was developed, which includes modification of 2 Ukrainian warships, the Slava-class cruiser Ukraina and the 1124P project corvette Vinnytsia. Ukraina is a sister ship of sunken Moskva cruiser, but she was never in action. She was under construction, and it was decided to use her as a museum object moving in Mykolaiv. Vinnytsia was an active ship, but it was too old, and it was decided to make a floating museum. But we faced different problems such as bureaucracy and lack of finances. Our works were complicated due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The funding was found, and works on the second ship started in 2021. The museum received the research vessel Okeania, which was moored in Kherson. You may see it, her on the right picture. And we had a lot of plans on 2002, as it was before 2014. But all of us were walking by blast behind windows on February 24, 2022. And we understood that our life would never be as it was before. The museum lost the research vessel. She was exploded by Russians before their retreat from Kherson. The demilitarized corvette Vinnytsia, which was ready to become a floating museum, was hit by a Russian missile in Achakov and capsized. Later, Russians understood that the museum artifact, and not a warship, had been destroyed. They spent an expensive missile for this. Yes, you may see on the right pictures the sunken corvette. This picture was made from by reconnaissance aircraft, Russian reconnaissance aircraft. In March 2022, the humanitarian mine clearance unit was established at the museum. The museum research fellows had trainings and tested the equipment to be ready to carry out the demining mission as ROV and side scan sonar operators on the area of the Black Sea and the Dnieper River. It was planned that we would participate in demining actions after the Ukrainian counteroffensive in 2023, but it was unsuccessful. That's why now the situation is in this region very dangerous and unpredictable. We cannot provide these actions because it is unsafe, but we are ready to do it when situation changes. The Russian flagship cruiser Moskva was hit by Ukrainian anti-ship missile Neptune and sunk in April 2022. It was the first victory of the Ukrainian Navy. Giving hope and optimism to Ukrainian people, the museum, in collaboration with non-commercial organization DNA, opened the Negative Buoyancy Swedish show, which was dedicated to this event. You may see some announcement of this event, guys who participated, who visited it. Right now, the Finnish government has given us a vessel which may be used for monitoring of the water area. And with the help of Professor Dr. Edmund Mazer from the Institute for Toxicology and Pharmacology for Natural Scientists of Kiel University, we have received the laboratory for remote detection of explosives of substances in the water. Sergei Voronov now is in Odessa, processing our custom formalities for the equipment, and we hope we will be soon able to make the Black Sea clean and safe. You may see pictures of this vessel. About our future plans, the patrol vessel Slaviansk and the fast assault craft Stanislav were two of few ships which were lost during the war. Most of their crew members are missed in action. You may see their pictures here, those young guys. That's why the first our task is to organize a search and exploration mission when the situation became stable. And it has been agreed with the officials to raise those ships for further modification if it is technically possible. It is discussed to complete the modification of the cruiser Ukraina, which is a sister ship of sunken Moskva, as I have told, mooring here in Mykolaiv. It is planned to give a new building to the museum, and we have to create a totally new exposition which will show the naval history of Ukraine from ancient times till present. And of course, our task is to memorize all Ukrainian defenders who gave their lives for freedom and independence of the country. Heroes are alive until memory about them lives. And of course, we respect you for your support and solidarity with Ukraine and with our museum. We are grateful for any kind of help, of course, such as diving and research equipment and materials. The most important, I think, it is getting now a new experience in the field of protection of underwater heritage and underwater explorations and museum management. Before, I was going to ask for any kind of training programs, internship programs, but now I don't know how to realize it practically. Yes, because now it is prohibited for researchers to leave Ukraine. That's why I hope the situation will be changed in future and it will be possible. But in any kind, we thank you. We respect you for your help and thank you for watching. Okay. Maybe you have some questions. I will be glad to answer.
Yes, as you saw, Dr. Paliienko is a curator at the Central Naval Museum of Ukraine. And if we are lucky, Sergei, are you possibly with us?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. Welcome, Sergei.
Thank you very much.
You are getting a really warm welcome from everybody here in Amsterdam at the Scheepvaartmuseum. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for trying so hard to be with us in person. It's not possible this time, but you're always welcome further on. There'll be more opportunities, and we hope to have you with us. We have time for some questions. Maybe we could have Kristen or someone passing the mic around. Thank you so much for the presentation. It gives an idea of what it must be like to move your whole museum, to move your whole all of your work to a different place. And you did this already in 2014, and now you're also working on the verge of archaeological science and also clearing mines. I think that's amazing. Are there any questions for Sergei? Yes, we do have one.
Hi, I'm so proud to talk to you. I'm from Canada, from Quebec. I was wondering if it's certainly not so easy, but are you still able to collect actual artifacts, something to remember what you're experiencing, and maybe collect interviews, talk with people and collect on actual time to preserve
Yes,
memories for the future?
Yes, we collect artifacts in general because our museum is just a part of the whole museum of the military history of Ukraine. We collect artifacts which remains from military actions near Kiev. You have seen on one picture destroyed tanks, Russian tanks, which we collected, and we try to collect something connected to the sea and naval activity, but it is hard now because the shore is under Russian attacks, especially in Nikolaev region. It is possible only in Odessa region. That's why we are planning in future probably to do it more actively when it will be more safe.
Thank you. While we're waiting for the next question, I'm curious, how has the war affected your possibilities to work? Have many of your staff been called up for military service, for instance? Those kind of practical logistical issues?
In Ukraine, scientists, researchers who have academic degree, we have reservation from military service. But because we are the part of the not central, but National Military History Museum, which belongs to the Ministry of Defense. That's why we are civilian employees of the Ministry of Defense. That's why we can do some work, some military work. But we cannot be sent to the front line, yes. But if it is safe enough, we can do some activity which helps for Ukrainian army forces. That's why it was possible to create the mining unit to help the Navy in this mission.
Yeah, thanks, Sergei. I think we have time for one more question.
Sergei, can I just say I wish you all the very best out there. I don't think any of us actually really understand the disruption that is going on with the lack of power and everything else that goes on in Ukraine today. But my question is more about how we document wars. It is traditional that the victors write the history. And I think in this particular case, it's important that you can have enough history that even if it were to turn against you, that this should be properly realized or recognized that it was an aggressive act and it must not be allowed to stand. Could you comment on that?
We are going to collect testimonies, but now it's hard because people who participate in actions, they are active militaries. That's why sometimes for the security reason it is prohibited to contact them and so on, especially, some special forces officers who participated in operations on Zminy Island and so on. We are going to do this, but probably at the end of the conflict. But we have plans. We understand that it's very important to collect testimonies because it is results of the war. They are documented, especially about heritage damages. It is doing on the level of the Ministry of Culture, but on the local level, of course. But we are planning as a Naval Museum to collect some stories about the activity of the Ukrainian Navy. I think it will be interesting.
Sergei, thank you so much for being with us. You will receive a nice round of applause, I'm sure, from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support and help. Thank you very much.
Our second speaker, Dr. Dmitri Kobaliia, is actually here with us in person, and we're very grateful for that. Dr. Kobaliia is the Director of Archaeology at the Khortytsiia National Reserve in Zaporizhzhia. He's here despite many difficulties and a long journey. He's a leading Ukrainian scholar and maritime archaeologist. But that is not all. He volunteered in the Ukrainian army on the first day of the full-scale invasion, and he has spent 2.5 years as a soldier at the front line, firing mortar artillery, while at the same time, whenever possible, preparing scientific articles, holding editorial meetings, literally from the front lines. Dima, I've seen some of your videos and pictures from the front lines. I've seen your positions being bombarded by artillery exploding everywhere around you. And I cannot possibly comprehend the conditions under which you have served. And the fact that you're still being able to function as a human being, and let alone to do scientific work. We are so glad to have you here among colleagues and friends. This is family, Dima. This is where you belong. Please join me in giving the warmest possible welcome to Dr. Kobaliia.
Thank you, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you in such a big and strong team of maritime museums of the world. And today I will talk not about preserving of the monuments in Ukraine, because it's difficult to say about it. All the territory is a front line now. But I will be talking about maybe trends. And really, I thought about it in front line maybe 1 or 2 months ago. So I'll be talking about Ukrainian underwater heritage. Ukraine is one of the largest countries in Europe and naturally possesses a large number of underwater cultural heritage. These include shipwreck sites from antiquity to present day, ancient submerged settlements, crossing points, forts, port facilities, anchorages, dugouts, and many others. A specific feature of Ukraine is a relatively large number of submerged land sites, cemeteries, burial sites, and settlements. There is due to the creation of cascade of hydroelectric power plants on Dnieper River on the 20th century. Now they may be classified as underwater sites, which is quite strange. For example, in Lage Mennonite Cemetery of 18th century on Dnieper River. It's a depth about 20 meters now. After the start of full-scale Russian invasion, in early 2022, the situation with underwater sites in the lower reaches of Dnieper River is changing dramatically. On the morning of June 6, 2023, Russian troops blow up Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. The operation, aiming to prevent flanking strike by Ukrainian army, becomes the largest hydrological disaster in the South Ukraine. The serious hydrological changes that followed the collapse of dam affected a section of river over 300 kilometers. By midsummer of 2023, the water level of Dnipro upstream of the dam had fallen to the natural one. In the upper reaches of the river, it dropped by an average of 6 meters, while to the south, the drop was about 16 meters. The Kakhovka reservoir, with an area of 482,000 square kilometers, disappeared. Within a year, the area of the reservoir decreased by 91% and the value of the water by 96%. These dramatic events caused a whole complex of hydrological processes reflected in several fields at once, in hydrobiology, geology, and, of course, cultural affairs. At the moment of the changes in the hydrological regime, in this zone make it possible to trace two processes overlapping each other and intensifying in opposite directions. Both undoubtedly will have their consequences in the short and long term. On the one hand, we see extensive shallowing and drying of previously flooded areas, primarily in the area of Kakhovka Reservoir. On the other hand, a sharp increase in the river flow below Zaporizhzhia and to a lesser extent Kakhovka dams. The latter is related to uncontrolled water discharge, as the Kakhovka power plant today is a natural waterfall on the dam debris. Zaporizhzhia Dam is forced to release water after multiple missile attacks. By this fall, the 40 meters dam had withstood 14 strikes by ballistic and cruise missile. And I can say that the dam is situated in 1 kilometer from my house. Let's take a brief look at both of these processes. The shallowing and draining of the vast area between Kakhovka and the southern suburb of Zaporizhzhia has converted many archaeological sites from underwater to terrestrial ones. These include hundreds of settlements and burial sites from the Stone Age to the early 20th century. Among the most significant sites that have lost the status of underwater and partially submerged ones, we can name 6 Zaporizhzhian sieges, or Cossacks' capital of 16th, 18th centuries. The headquarters of Mamai Khan, the city Shahar al-Jadid, which existed in 1360-1374, the capital of Scythian kingdom in period of 6 to 4 centuries before Christ. We should mention that all this vast territory, even before the flooding, was of great importance to cultural memory of Ukraine. Until the middle of the 20th century, the great meadow of Zaporozhye was located here, a specific interflow of the Dnipro and Konka rivers. Abandoning with forests, small channels, lakes, and islands, there is where the legendary Scythian Gilead of Herodotus was located, and this is where the institution of Cossacks was born. The fall of the river level did not lead to the emergence of desert. We are witnessing intensive restoration of biocenosis, including hydrology, which means there is an opportunity for detailed underwater survey of the beds of the small channels and lakes found before the invention of scuba diving. Of course, theoretically, it could have been done before, but standing water and siltation impeded it. In our research, showed as the flooded beds of all rivers in general preserved their relief, but were covered with significant layer of silt, and water visibility barely reached a meter. In summertime, it dropped to 0. Now the flowing water is quite clear, and the silt accumulations have started to be gradually washed away by floods. A gradual fading of Dreissena shell colonies, which had grown due to warm standing water, is also expected. Its strata in some places reached up to 2 meters. It was extremely difficult to conduct any archaeological investigation in such conditions. The second process is associated with a strengthening of the Dnieper River flow, primarily in the 10-kilometer area below Zaporizhzhia and Kakhovka power plants. Uncontrolled water discharge has increased the speed of water flow about 10 times. We may judge about how cardinal the changes in the underwater relief downstream of the dam can be by events of the end of 20th century. At that time, heavy floods forced the release of excess water directly through one spillway of the dam. In normal operation, all the water went into the turbine compartments. In the spring of 1998, in just a few hours, the water flow washed away a part of Khortytsiia bank, about 4,000 square meters. The changes underwater were even more dramatic. The coastal areas of Khortytsiia Island along the western channel of the Dnipro increased their depths to 8 meters. huge masses of sand were shifted southward. These masses could carry large heavy objects weighing more than 300 kilograms, such as, for example, an oil-cruder blade of brigantine. This happened due to the powerful turbulent flows occurring in the places where the river passed through a narrow area and then sharply widened. In such areas, water flows began to move at a step angle to the shore, quickly eroding its sandy strata. As a result, the hulls of the ship of Dnipro flotilla of 18th century were found under the shore. Shipwrecks, including brigantines, galleys, country buses, prams, and Cossacks' boats, had been found before, but not in such quantity and not in such conditions. Archaeological excavations of some of the ships and analysis of stratigraphy indicate that all of them were destroyed preciously during a period of high floods, when masses of sand exposed the wood. It's a period of the end of 18th, 19th century, usually. When the sediments were washed away and the hulls began to deteriorate under the impact of the current. Wet wood retained its morphology, but became softer. Nail did not longer held. Under its own weight, combined with the impact of the waters, the structure disintegrated. Some of the parts floated and were carried away. For example, the stern of the brigantine of 1738 was found in 8 kilometers downstream. This example from 25 years ago has direct relevance to what is happening today. In 2024, the processes described above are several times stronger, and unlike the situation, they did not have a predictable end. It is difficult to imagine what is happening on the bottom of the river in Zaporizhia area now, but we will try. Obviously, bottom scoring continued in spring 2024 with great intensity. With the end of the flood, by summer, they slowed down but did not stop completely. Much of the wooden wreckage has drifted downstream, thus increasing the extent of the wreck size dramatically. In conditions of the river with a strong current, there is a direct correlation of the ratio of mass and size of the object with the distance they drifted, whether they are ship's parts or ship contents. In our conditions, the most static are iron objects such as cannonballs, small shots, buckles, baton, etc. One way or another, the planography of the 18th century complex has changed. The hulls protruding from the ground, especially those in the turbulent zone, could be largely exposed, which accelerates their destruction or damage. At the same time, new objects earlier hidden in the sediments emerged. Of course, in this situation, the exposed coastal zone of the old Dnipro, here and downstream, should bear particular interest for underwater research as the concerning and the concentration of the finds there is significantly higher. Let me remind you once again that by the time scuba and underwater archaeological boom appeared in the USSR in the late 60s, these banks had already been flooded and stabilized by the weakening of the current. I am absolutely sure that the number of identified underwater sites in this situation would increase several times. Among the problems that will inevitably arise with the study of the territory after the war, and which are the direct consequence of it, we should know the following. Such works will be significantly complicated by the mining coastal areas. The front line along the Dnieper River stretched for 360 kilometers, so all that south stream of Dnieper is the front line. Right bank is Ukrainian, left bank is Russian occupied. The left occupied bank is low and mine barriers are not uncommon here. In addition to the coastal zone, there are also mines in the water. Another problem may be the ratio of the number of underwater archaeologists to the number of sites in Ukraine. In the pre-war years, the Institute of Archaeology issued only a few permits for underwater work. The abundance of washed-out objects, as well as the economic crisis, will inevitably lead to a surge of looting surveys, which were hardly blocked before. In a summer 2023, the Institute of Archaeology undertook a reconnaissance expedition along the right bank of the Dnieper River with the participation of the military. Its goal was to survey of already unknown sites and search previously unknown ones. And the result of that expedition will be a little later. Steppe zone. Some dams of the steppe rivers in the southeast of Ukraine were damaged or destroyed during the 3 years of war. Of course, changes here are smaller in scale than in a Dnieper region, but in general, we can talk about the same trends and problems. For obvious reasons, the coastal zone here was also mined. And on the Dnieper, the destruction of small reservoir leads to the exposure of previously flooded sites, primarily Bronze Age settlements. In the Black Sea, most of the sites are located on the coastal shelf, with the depths between 30 and 40 meters. Unfortunately, many shipwrecks were damaged in Soviet time because of trawl fishing. The preservation of wrecks is much better in closed areas near military bases such as Mini Island. Not much has changed for them during the war, except the access to them is complicated by the minefields and military installation on the shore. So the military action and the destruction of Kakhovka Dam, first of all, had serious consequences for underwater cultural heritage. Mainly we can say about the water flow of Dnieper in south region of Ukraine. First of all, it concerns the sites located on the Dnieper River and tributaries in the south. These consequences have both negative and positive sides. On the one hand, if the status quo is preserved, we see prospects opening for underwater archaeology and the possibility of surveying iconic sites of national importance. On the other hand, such work is connected with considerable economical difficulties and seems unsafe for the moment. In any case, to solve all these issues, we need to stop the aggression and win this war. And after that, I can say thank you very much, all of you, for your support to Ukraine, and we will never forget it. Thank you very much.